Good. Hey, welcome everybody, and welcome to the product launch of Solution Design. My name is Marcel Holsheimer. I'm CMO with ValueBlue, and I'm here together with Patrick Storms, who heads up our solution consulting team. So today, we're going to talk about the launch of Solution Design. So Solution Design is a set of new features and capabilities, as well as templates and best practices that we're bringing to the market and that will help you to build better solution designs. It's specifically built for transformation teams. You may call these teams different, by the way. You may call them your development teams or your agile teams, but for this presentation, we'll talk about these as transformation teams. And as a result of using solution design, these teams can execute more projects on time and they can deliver high quality solutions. Please note that we're going to use the word projects a lot in our presentation. These projects can be agile projects, they can be iterative projects, they can even be continuous projects. You may call them differently in your organization. You may refer to them as change projects or epics or whatever. In this presentation, we'll simply call them projects, but it can mean a whole host of different things. So, what are we going to talk about today? We'll first start with giving you insight in why we're doing this. So we'll take a step back and look at how solution design fits into the broader BlueDolphin suite, as well as in the vision that we have as an organization. Then I'm going to hand over to Patrick. Patrick will demo what solution design does. He'll showcase our process and templates for solution design. He'll also talk about the new features that we're bringing to the market. What he'll show is actually the first features that we're bringing to the market. And there's a lot more coming. So Patrick will also cover our vision on how we further develop solution design. After that, I'll take it back and I'll discuss our offering here, which is the solution design bundle. And in this bundle, we'll provide access to new features, but also services that help you to start this, to implement this into your organization and get started quickly. So let's take a step back first. And look at the bigger picture. So with enterprise architecture, we help organizations to effectively plan and execute their transformation and change projects. So that's what enterprise architecture does for you. Well, you've probably seen these figures before, but reality that most of those projects don't go that well. So statistics show that around 70% of projects exceed the budget. 31%, only 31 actually achieves the benefits that you expected them to achieve, and only 25% of the expected savings are realized. These are average numbers, obviously, but it gives you an idea of how well things are going. So, for example, if you're a mid-sized company, and let's say you execute 30 of these projects in a year, you might invest 7 million for that. You might expect 8 million in savings and 30 million in additional revenues. That might be your business case. But the reality is that 21 of those projects will go over budget, you'll incur 2.5 million extra costs, your savings will only be 2 million rather than 8, and your business benefits will actually be 10 million rather than 30. So that's not good. So if we dig a little bit deeper, then you can see that this is actually caused by challenges in two areas. And these areas are basically two things. One is strategic planning. So if you start a transformation project, you want to make sure you select and prioritize the right projects. Then if you execute one of those projects, you want to make sure you do it right. And you build the right designs and connect to your stakeholders and work through the process in a proper way. Challenges exist in both of those. And there's a reason for that. The first reason is actually that the landscape that you have is getting increasingly complex. You may have thousands of processes in your organization. You may have applications that support those processes, data sources, other things, and they're all connected in various ways. So that makes it really hard on the planning side, because what you want to do is you want to identify potential improvements in your landscape. If your landscape is complex, that's hard. On the project side, you also want to upfront identify the impact that you will have, or risks and dependencies. So if I change a process in this project, are there other sides of the organization or other processes in the organization that might be affected by that? You want to really make sure that you get that overview. So lack of overview is one challenge. The other challenge we hear a lot about is the lack of alignment, because the projects that you're doing are not defined and executed in isolation. And they serve business goals, they have stakeholders that are involved, drivers that are involved. So that makes it hard as well. So for example, you want to make sure that your projects align with your strategic goals. You also want to make sure that if you design something in a project, that you actually align and agree with your project stakeholders on the business side, that you're developing the stuff that they need to drive the business. So doing that is basically what you want to achieve. So having a complex landscape and having that many people involved makes it really hard to execute projects, plan and execute projects properly. So let's look at enterprise architecture now, and let's basically look at how enterprise architecture helps with this. Well, the central component is the enterprise architecture repository, and that repository describes and stores information about the landscape that we just talked about. So your business landscape on one hand, your IT landscape on the other side. And it lists all the items and the connections and relationships between those. So getting that overview in place will help you with the next two steps. The first step is strategic planning. So what you want to do is you want to figure out which projects you want to do first, and you want to prioritize them. And this is typically done by enterprise architects or PMOs. And it goes through a couple of steps. It helps you with things like business modeling, using business model canvas, for example, or capability map. It helps you with strategic prioritization. So how do I figure out what my objectives are and which projects should be done to realize those? How do I look at the order of projects? So how do I build a roadmap, looking at priorities and dependencies? And in the end, it's also governance and project guidance. How do I set standards for the consistent execution of projects? So that's what most of our customers have been doing so far. And what we're introducing today is the other side here. The other side is solution design. So if you start with a project, then you want to go through a couple of steps, and you want to use enterprise architecture principles to do that. So that helps you to make sure the project works well, gets executed on time and budget. There's a couple of steps here. Patrick will discuss those steps in a minute. So we'll go into what solution design does. What I want to show you here is that it's an important part of the overall proposition. But before we dive into solution design, there's one very important point that I would like to make first. One of the big challenges that enterprise architecture has is keeping the repository up to date. You can spend a lot of time figuring out what all your processes are and what all your processes and how they relate to other stuff. You can build that repository out. But the point is, by the time that you're done, a lot has changed already. And the main reason that it changes is that teams will actually make changes to your organization. So the only way to make sure that your repository stays up to date is making sure that the people that make the changes use the same system and update that repository. So that's why it's so essential that solution design is actually part of your enterprise architecture suite, because that's the only way to keep your repository up to date. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Patrick and go for the demo.
Okay, thank you, Marcel. Switch for a second. So yes, thank you. I now logged into BlueDolphin, and I will guide you through BlueDolphin to show how solution design is supported, and also highlight some of the new capabilities and features that we've added at ValueBlue. So what we see here is the landing page of our demo environment. So a made-up company called Liberty Retail, who sells beauty products online and in stores, and just like any other organization, they have business transformations going on. So really the first thing that we added to support solution design in BlueDolphin is the concept of a project space. So let's review that. So we can either access that through the navigation structure I built here, or the project space button on top. So let's have a look at that. So when I enter the project space, I see a list of all in-flight projects and their status and the dates of the last changes and their owners, etc. So this is the place where you can organize the changes and all the data that belongs to these changes, all your designs and all your visuals. You can tie them together within a project space. So let me quickly demonstrate how that works. Suppose I create a new project and I call it my new project. I can give a description here. I create that space and now I get an empty project space with my project title, and I can add views right away here. Maybe select one of the templates, etc. So all these views will then be connected to that project. So I can kind of bundle them. So I've already done that for one of the projects here. It's called Global 24/7 Omnichannel Support. So if I open that project space, you can see a list of all views and all diagrams that are in there and belong to that project. So at the top, I see a description of the project so that I know what it's about. And here I can set the status. So in progress, paused, or completed. So this is a really convenient way of organizing all the information that you need for a specific change or project. So for instance, if we look at the customer journey map, we can simply open it and it will be opened within the context of the project. I can recognize it by the little status icon here on the top that I'm still in project space. And also I can navigate back to my project overview over here. So this is really a way to organize all that information. The next thing we worked on at ValueBlue was a structured way of executing your change, right? So how do you really approach the implementation of or the solution design itself? So what kind of approach do you take? For that, we developed a canvas that acts as a navigation structure and that guides you through that change. So I put that in here. It's called Project Home. And if I open that, I will see a canvas with a couple of steps. You will recognize these steps and these titles from the presentation Marcel gave. And I'll just quickly talk you through it and give you an idea of what this is about. So really, this is a visual backdrop to guide solution design, but with each of the steps, there's a thought behind it on how to use it, right? So the first part is really setting the stage. So that's the project context. So from the repository, you drop your project object on the canvas, and there you can capture the metadata of that project in the questionnaires on the right side, just as you're used to with any type of object, right? So now that we know that this project exists and we know the properties of that project. Furthermore, in the project context, you can put in the goal that the project contributes to. So you have your vertical alignment there with your goal and refer to any principles or policies that you have in there. So let's not go into that. Important, everything you know about your current state architecture, you can put in here. In this case, it refers to 2 business capabilities that are affected by the change. This is really the preparation of your project. So then the real work starts in 4 steps, where a value refinement phase is really validating the business value of your project, of the solution you want to develop. The requirements phase is about capturing the functional and non-functional requirements that you will use to validate any design later on. The solution architecture phase is actually creating current and future state designs in terms of processes, application, data, and technology. I'll show a couple of examples there. And finally, when the designs are done, you're going to plan the implementation. So maybe you're not going to implement everything in one go, but in phases, or maybe you have to assign certain chunks of the solution to certain teams. So that planning of how you're going to deliver that is really done in the last step. So to give you an idea, I'm going to walk through a couple of these examples, but it's important to understand it's not a linear process that you go through from 1 to 4 in a gated way. You go back and forth. It's iterative. So one of the ideas one of the templates we added for the value refinement phase is the value proposition canvas. And that is a way of thinking about your proposition or service that you deliver to your customer. So how does that canvas work? Well, on the right-hand side, we see the customer with the jobs or the tasks that he or she wants to perform, the gains or benefits that the customer perceives, and the pains that he experiences. So opposite to that, it has to match against your value proposition, in this case, an improved customer service, and that will have certain capabilities here. So that's the service description itself, and the pain relievers have to mitigate the pains, and the gain creators have to deliver the benefits for the customer. All of this is a thought process you go through with your business stakeholders. It is really leveraging the free shape drawing capabilities of BlueDolphin. Nothing is added to the repository, but it does help you to define your service that you want to deliver and build. So you have this in one place in your architecture repository. And from there, you can make it more formal or build out or start to think what you're actually going to deliver. And that's something you do in a high-level design. So you translate that, the outcome of the value proposition canvas in a high-level design. And really, that's a storyboard, right? It's a visual representation of the solution you want to implement. In this case, it's a story about routing customer tickets or questions through a routing engines to different teams in the world, and also introducing a self-service portal for customer support. So using icons, text, pictures, and free shape diagrams, you really create a common understanding of the solution you want to build. It can be one visual, it can be an entire story. In the end, this is what you usually would do on a whiteboard. But there's a trick here. So you see that we mix this with Archimate objects. So objects that are actually part of your architecture repository. So with the routing engine, we think that an application called Genesis would really help to implement this. But this is not yet part of our current state architecture because it's not yet being built. And we see that little star icon in the corner there. And that's something we just recently introduced. It's the object lifecycle stage. So we see object lifecycle state here with the term future state. So with this, we indicate that this application lives in some future state and may be introduced later on, but is not yet part of our current state architecture. This was already possible in BlueDolphin using the questionnaires and the plateaus, but now we natively embedded this feature, the object lifecycle, in BlueDolphin. And it's available in reporting, and in the coming weeks and months, there will be more deeper functionality related to the object lifecycle in place, so really to keep your repository clean. So go at this a bit more quickly. In the end, we'll translate that to a business service blueprint. So all these ideas, we kind of formalize that in business services we want to deliver in your business architecture. Again, with the star icon to indicate that these 4 services are new and need to be implemented. I'm going to skip through the requirements for now. I just want to zoom in on the solution architecture phase over here. So suppose from a process perspective, we will now design our future state business processes for our new and improved customer service. So how would that look? Well, then we would use templates that look like this with 2 sides to it. So one side is the current state. These are the current business processes related to customer support, and the future state, the future processes related to the solution we want to deliver. Again, with the star icons, you see which components, which processes will be newly created, but still it doesn't really tell me how the new process is actually designed, right? So it tells me more about structure and the place of the processes in the entire process landscape, but it doesn't tell me how the process is done. Now, for this, we can use our new BPMN module and design the future state process for ticket management in this case. So that will open the BPMN editor that is in place. We've had a separate webinar on that one. But again, this is not an isolated or a drawing capability. it is connected to our repository. We see this link icon, so this customer data actually refers to a data object in the repository, and in the blue bars, we see application names that actually are tied to our application portfolio in the architecture. So if we want to change this around and just say, no, this task is performed by another application, we can search the application repository, for instance, let's say Freight View. So we find that application, we select it, and we connect it to this task. So we made a change to the business process that was in place. Still, it is, although it's linked to the application, it's not yet part of the repository yet, because this is still in draft. We are still designing. And only when we consolidate this back to the repository, it will be, these relationships will be created. I will show that right now. We'll find our process, the ticket management process. Sorry for that. Ticket management process. There we go. This is our current state diagram. And here I have my own version that I just changed. And now if I publish this, I get a side-by-side comparison. And on the right-hand side, I can see Freight View is now part in this step. And finally, if I was about to publish this version, so my newly designed future state process, it will tell me that new relationships will be added to my repository. So I can write it back to my enterprise architecture repository and really make that consolidation over there. So that is a very powerful way of designing the future state and then updating your enterprise architecture repository. Well, in the final steps, finally, when you go, you can do the same for the application perspective and so on, but not go into that. Finally, you link it to, for instance, your Jira board, where you plan your implementation, translate it into epics, and leverage our Jira integration for that. So your development teams can now work from Jira on these different components. So with that, I want to close off this little demo, this short demo of solution design in BlueDolphin, but I'm going to take you on a roadmap. So how do these features fit into our product vision in a second. Also, if you want to know more about this approach, please sign up for the workshops that we have on solution design to learn more about this. So if we now look at the product vision, so how does the solution design fit into a product vision? Well, first of all, if you have, as an organization, you have different applications, processes, and data in place, really the first step to do is to organize that. Right? And this is where the central repository, the enterprise architecture repository, comes in. As you organize your application, data, processes, technology assets that you have, and that will shorten design time. You can pull a project start architecture from here. And this central repository has been foundational to BlueDolphin since the beginning. So that was always there. So that's the starting point. But really, if you do a change or a project, you want to focus on only those parts that are affected. So you want to kind of isolate the data, process, application, technology assets for that particular project. And this is where the project space comes in, right? That is what I've shown in the demo, that we have the separate part called projects, where you can group all these architecture components and views together per project. That allows you to maintain the overview and to collaborate on a project level. So the next step is to separate the current from the future state. This is what we introduced with the object lifecycle. So we had the future state indicator there, and visually that was indicated with a little star icon on the objects. That will help you to keep the repository clean, do a gap analysis, and later on also consolidate it back to your repository. So that's where we are now. And the next step then will be to handle multiple projects in parallel that share the same resources, that share the same architecture components. There may be conflicts and dependencies, and you want to have that in that overview of that. So this is where object transactions come in, so to identify the dependencies and potential conflicts and to time travel. So how do object transactions work? Well, currently we have a transaction log of everything that happened in the past in terms of relationships, properties, objects that were created and such. These are available in the transaction log. And now we give everything also a future state. So that's the new part. So for instance, some project may delete a relationship while another adds a relationship and so on. And maybe some project will update certain properties while another project will change the value of that into something else. So there may be conflicts and dependencies here. So if you have these transactions, object transactions in place, you're able to do conflict analysis and resolve them. You identify the conflicts and can resolve them early, and you can do time travel. So at any point in time, you can review what your enterprise architecture will look like. Finally, you keep your repository up to date, and you can close the loop. This is 2025 functionality that we are rolling out currently. I'm now going to hand it back to Marcel.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Sorry for that.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, cool. Good. Well, I hope you guys liked the demo as well as the vision of where we're taking this. So let's go to the final part, like how do I get started with solution design? So we're making a lot of new functionality available, as you guys can see. And the idea is that we're bringing this to the market as a bundle. And the bundle basically means software components, so access to the brand new solution design functionality and also the future functionality that Patrick talked about, as well as sheets for team members. So we call these solution design sheets, and the package contains 30 of those. Well, the other side is that we also want to help you be successful with this. So we're combining this with support to align with your current solution design. So we're going to figure out like, okay, how do you currently do this, and how does this approach that we just sketched support that, and how can we match those things? But we also want to make sure that you can get started successfully with your first project. So there's a package here that's done by our CSM team that consists of things like training and enablement workshop, help with your first projects, but also things like we really would like to learn from you and also get your feedback on future development. So join us on that journey. So that's the bundle. So yeah, we covered a lot here, right? We only did it in 30 minutes. There's probably a lot more to talk about. So if you're interested, we can help you to explore how solution design can benefit your organization. And for that, we offer a limited number of workshops this quarter. They're 2-hour workshops. They're conducted on-site or online if needed, and they will typically involve multiple members of your team. What we're going to do in that workshop is basically an overview, a much more comprehensive overview of our approach to solution design. You've seen the preview here, but there's more, of course. We'll talk about, we'll discuss how you currently do things, and we'll figure out like how the approach that we have maps on what you currently do and how you get as much value from that as possible. So we have these workshops. So there are several of those already scheduled with folks in the audience here. If you're interested, please contact your account manager, or either scan the QR code that's here and fill out the form, or simply type workshop in the chat so we know that you're interested. So please do this quickly. We have limited capacity only, and we want to make sure that we can help you when that's needed. So with that, I think we want to open up for Q&A and see if there's any specific questions that we may have.
Yes, we will leave this screen on so that you have time to scan the QR code, and we're getting the questions through. So we have a couple of minutes. So shall I go through them? And
yep, please.
When we run out of time, we can always answer offline, right? We will address them all. First of all, is this project that you create also created as a project element in the architecture module, and can you link these two? That's a very good question. At this point, no. So the project space you create is really has a title and is really bundling the views. It's not yet related to the project object, but we are considering that because that would make sense to do so. It's a very good one. Can you take an existing view and create a copy of it into a project space? Yes. So you can create and take an existing view, copy the content, and create it, paste it into a view that you create within the space. Again, we are making things easier that you can do them in one go. Right. A good question also there. Is it possible to feed project data from an external project or program tool like PlanView? Yes, as you've seen, project metadata can be stored on the questionnaires on a project object. These questionnaires are freely configurable, and we have our public API to build out that integration. So yes, that's possible. Is BlueDolphin a full project management tool with that? No. You will probably handle other things like tracking hours or burn down charts in other tools, right? So that's the point there. Let's pick one more. Is the project object an implementation of the work package Archimate object? Yes, it is. well seen, Brian. In BlueDolphin, you can rename the labels of the Archimate object. So we felt that project was better word than work package, but it is the same. Yeah, I think in the light of time, we'll just leave it at this. There are a couple of more, but we will answer them directly and offline.
Good.
So with that, we want to close the webinar. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Have a good day.